and I'll mute.
Hey folks, just to let you know, we'll get going in a couple of minutes here. We'll give it one more minute and we'll get going. All right. Well, we're at 1:04. We'll go ahead and get the education think tank kicked off. Folks, I'm Craig Carver. I am an enterprise account executive here at Zendesk, and I want to welcome you to this first education think tank that Zendesk and BrainSell hosted together. We're very excited about the format and what we're going to be doing today. But before we get going on this, we've got one little piece of information we'd like from you. So if we could advance to the next slide, we have a question for everybody on the line. And we're going to start this with a poll so we get everybody involved. And the idea here is to gather as much information as possible from you so that we can then provide it back to you. The whole idea here is not to be a sales thing. This is actually, as a think tank, we really want to provide information back to you and make this as beneficial as possible. So before we jump into all the content, we're going to go ahead and just do this poll real quick. If you don't mind doing that for us, we would appreciate it. And we'll talk about some of the additional content that will be provided afterwards. We'll keep it open a couple of more minutes here. All right, responses are coming in quick now. I'll give it 30 more seconds. All right, terrific. Appreciate that very much. Thank you for that information. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide here. And just wanted to provide a quick a nice quick agenda for you. We're going to get through some introductions, and then we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start just talking about the challenges that higher education is facing these days. A lot has changed in the last couple of months. We're going to talk about some of the solutions, get it real interactive, and then we're going to leave you with some resources to help and talk about what will be followed up after this is completed. So if you wouldn't mind, let's go on to the next slide. As I said, I'm Craig Carver. I'm an enterprise account executive for Zendesk. I reside in Texas, so I've had the opportunity to work with a number of our higher education, our universities here. Very excited to say that one of those that I got to work with is the one that I probably wear the ring of, Giga Maggie's, and a number of others here in the Texas vicinity. My co-host with me today is Sonia Friedel. Sonia, I'd like you to introduce yourself too, please.
Great. Thank you, Craig, very much. It's great to be here. My name is Sonia Friedel, president at BrainSell. We're a partner with Zendesk and a lot of other technology solutions that help companies scale and grow and be more efficient. That includes higher ed. We've worked with a lot of colleges and universities around North America to help streamline their support systems and make it easier for students to communicate with the universities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sonia. So to kind of put this into context for you, we here at Zendesk, of course, have been working with all kinds of organizations across all industries. And when the pandemic hit and when the coronavirus caused this shelter in place, we saw a number of customers that were greatly impacted, a number of them negatively, some, believe it or not, positively. And what we were learning through the process was there was one area that was uniquely challenged, and that was you. It was interesting to watch as some industries completely shut down, so there was actually no business going on. There was really nothing that they could do, and we were hearing about furloughs and all kinds of negative activity going on. But within the higher education, my K through 12 and my higher education customers, we started getting a lot of calls, as you did. We were getting calls about, we're getting a lot of calls. We're getting a lot of questions. We're getting a lot of things that we haven't had to adapt to before, mainly because we weren't equipped to work from home. We weren't equipped to work remotely, and then to have these kinds of volumes coming in addition to now having to face things like remote learning as opposed to on campus. So what we're hoping to accomplish today is really, in this think tank, hear from others who have faced these challenges, maybe talk about some of the things that you're experiencing, and there's power in numbers, and hear from folks that have dealt with this and what challenges still exist, but then how we successfully overcome those as well. So whether it be proactively planning or best practices around maintaining that high level of student service, avoiding confusion among students, parents, and faculty, because another unique thing to you as higher education, you've got faculty and staff, you have students, and you have parents. it's a very unique challenge, and that's why we wanted to address it through this think tank. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, managing remote teams who are struggling to learn new systems, new processes, not being able to just walk down the hall and talk to somebody about a situation, but actually having to do some remote collaboration. So a number of items that we really wanted to cover today. So if we can go on to the next slide, we're going to jump right into that. What I want to just remind you of is when we open this up, and I want this to be a free form, I want you to feel free to share information. We want to make sure that we're doing this in the right way. So if you have your camera on, that would be wonderful, because being able to see you is very helpful. We invite everyone to join the conversation. Again, this is not us talking at you. This is us wanting to learn from you as much as you learning from us. And if you are uncomfortable speaking into a camera and you just want to get an answer to a question, feel free to use the chat at the bottom of the screen. We're happy to take your questions and put them out to the group and just get responses to you. So we make sure the questions get answered. We're monitoring it, and we're hoping that will really drive a lot of the conversation. Also, a couple of the deliverables. We are recording today's session. You will get a copy of that. Be happy to share it, as well as what we derive from this, we're going to put into a white paper for you as a deliverable, so you have the information readily available to you at any time. We're hoping to have that out to you in a few weeks. So can't say we never gave you anything. You can look for that in your email box in a few weeks. So well, what I'd like to do is kind of open this up to talking about some of the challenges. If we could go back one slide. I really just want to focus in on those things that are going to contribute to this white paper. So I'm sorry, Victoria, go ahead, go on to the next one. What we want to do is just talk about the challenges that you all are facing. So from maintaining that high level of student services on your campuses by going remote, streamlining that communication we talked about, this siloed enrollment management workflow and spikes that we keep hearing about from our customers and prospects as well. How does self-service play into all this for you? Quick responses to students in real time during virtual lectures, research surveys, meetings, those sorts of things. Managing customer-facing teams who are not very tech savvy and struggle with new learning systems. And then, of course, proactive problem solving. Why wait for challenges to look for you when you can tackle them proactively? So that's really the areas that we wanted to address in this first think tank. So if we can go on to the next slide.
And Craig, I've also just made it possible for people to share their videos. It was locked. So if anyone wants to share, you can now.
Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate it. We definitely want to be able to see people. So to start off, we had some people indicate that they were willing to talk about some of the things that they've been dealing with. And Kim, are you out there from Learning RX?
I'm right here, yep.
Hi, Kim, how are you?
Good.
Good, thank you for joining. I'm very interested to hear about some of those challenges that you indicated in when you agreed to come on board here. Let's talk about some of these challenges that you have faced over there at Learning RX. Okay.
Yeah, well, most of my challenges were not necessarily COVID-19, although that brought a lot of challenges. A lot of those we've solved. So, you know, we do one-on-one training in person typically. And so luckily about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, we started a pilot where we started to do some online training. We have over 100 procedures that we had to figure out how could we do these, you know, over Zoom. And so luckily we had already started that pilot. So we were able to take all of our centers, not only in the US, but all over the world, because it, you know, it impacted all countries. We were able to do our training online. But anyway, the challenges that I wrote down weren't really about COVID-19. Sorry, I must have misread. But
Oh, no, that's fine. Happy to take on all challenges.
yeah, one of the biggest challenges that we have as a company is that people don't really understand what we do. So a lot of people don't understand what brain training is, and one-on-one brain training. They know that there are brain games, and there are a lot of other things that maybe sound like they do what we do, but what we do is very different. So because we're kind of a new, although our programs have been around for over 35 years, and we started out in doctors' offices and hospitals and that type of thing, just educating people on what we do, that there are two parts to SMART, and we work on the processing side, not the knowledge side, which a lot of schools work on, is the knowledge side. We do the processing side. So I would say that that's a challenge. Also, it's a challenge to find people that have kind of some education or background in our area, and also some small business experience. So that's always difficult.
Oh, I'll bet. You made one interesting point. I think you said that you typically did things much more one-on-one in person. What challenges and how did you overcome some of those, that having to go from more of in-person to remote? How did you address that? And how successful were you?
Yeah, so we still do it one-on-one. So we have one trainer and we have one student, because we're working on what someone can't do, and we're changing that to a can. So we're working on things like memory and attention and processing speed. So it's very geared to the individual and where your strengths and weaknesses are. So the challenge was, we use like manipulatives, and we use cards, and we use, so trying to take the things that we would typically have on a table and somehow put them up on a screen and still make that work. So, to use tanagram pieces, or to use cards, or, the different manipulatives that we use to improve attention and memory.
Wow. Okay. Very, very interesting. I don't know if Kelly, are you on? I don't know if Kelly made it today from Washington. Chang, are you on from Temple? Chang, either you're on mute or are you not here? Well, then let me throw it out to the rest of the group. Let's talk about a couple of the challenges that you all faced over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Somebody want to just jump in and talk about the biggest challenge, or the top 2 challenges that you found yourself having to address, that we might have talked about earlier, or maybe something we haven't mentioned yet?
I have a really interesting use case from a customer of mine that I can kind of dive into. There's a State University of New York branch that we work with, and it wasn't just, this was more on the services side too, just the employee side. So they have a few employees who are trying to run auxiliary services, so funding student union and different club activities. And they had a very abrupt exit of the building, like everyone did in university.
Yep.
And was really difficult just to get even their internal operations, nothing even student facing, virtualized. So I know just, some universities were kind of behind on getting things to the cloud. So even things like just getting, getting maybe systems set up for university employees to request things. We were helping with that, and actually Zendesk is used by one of our customers, University of Louisville, to help support their internal employees getting virtual. So getting a new PC, getting a laptop, they put in the ticket, and then we're able to track it. So it's not just the students, I think, that are having a really hard time. Obviously, it's the employees and staff members, even from IT, not even student facing, that are having a lot of issues getting virtualized. So
terrific. Thanks, Sonia. Mark, you made an interesting point in chat here about being hands-on as an applied learning institution, and the challenge that you faced now having to go online. What were some of the things you did there to try to address that? Are you out there, Mark?
And I'm allowing Mark to talk. So there you go, Mark.
Thank
You
you.
should be
There
able
we
to
go.
speak now.
Thank you. I was wondering how to talk.
Technology.
So I think a lot of it for us is we emphasize the lab experience. So we emphasize, as an engineering institution, just having students actually, building things, creating things, designing things in our laboratories, and getting that hands-on experience, and having the opportunity to really get, as a way to prepare for their industry and career life after university. So getting that real world experience during their academic studies at our university. And so just trying to figure out how to, when we so emphasize people having the opportunities to kind of get their hands dirty, so to speak, how do you do that virtually? So that's been the big challenge, just making sure that students can in some way replicate things, whether it's sending some sort of like a lab kit home with students, or figuring out how they can do virtual group learning, when they can't gather together.
Yeah, because it's not just lecture notes and tests, right? There's a lot of the hands-on thing that goes into this, that all of a sudden, what kind of tools did you find to be the most effective for something like that?
Well, it was a very quick turnaround for us, because we're a university that before COVID-19 has really not done, I mean, we have almost no online courses. So I think we did well, but it was quite a challenge. So we've used a variety of things, whether it's Microsoft Teams, Blackboard, that sort of thing. But I think a lot of professors had to resort to some sort of a kit that students would take home, or kind of in the short term switching to more of a research focus, so that at least there was a learning process going, to supplement the lectures and the notes and the tests. But it's in general, it's been quite a challenge.
Wow. Yeah, I'll bet. Chang, I see that you're out there. Are you able to unmute? Or Sonia, if you could, there. Chang, do you have a couple of things that you wanted to share from a challenges perspective, perhaps? Okay, maybe not. Why don't we go ahead and go on to the next slide? And is Shishank, are you here from North Carolina State? I don't think I saw you out on the list, but I wanted to just call you out real quick to make sure. Because I'm sorry.
I don't believe so. Yeah, I'm just looking at
Okay.
the attendees.
Because the online communication and collaboration that Shishank brought up, I wanted to throw out to the group too. I mean, as I said, there are a number of use cases for universities that we encounter. Number one is kind of that internal IT use case. Number two is that the student communication collaboration. Number three is parent communication. So you've got communication and collaboration issues now having to be fully remote with parents, with student, and now with your faculty and staff. I want to just throw it out to the group. How difficult was that, losing the ability to interact on a personal level in person, and now having to do it much more online? Anybody else face some of those challenges? Well, maybe I'll turn to Sonia on that one too. Have you run into any of those with your customers, Sonia?
Oh, definitely. And I know, I mean, there's so many different online platforms. I know for a lot of the core kind of K through 12, Google Classroom is being used, and that's helping a lot even with the communication. But email too is just, I've seen email as just a huge tool that maybe students weren't even used to doing email as much as they are now. So first of all, I think our higher ed students are getting a crash course in how to really conduct professional, fantastic emails. But it's also just a lot of emails for the professors to have to handle. I really sympathize with everyone on that. And then email used as a service route can just be so overwhelming. So I've been hearing just a lot of pain on having to answer hundreds of emails a day.
Right. And one of the things that we run into on the collaboration piece is when there is an issue, and I've taken it as kind of the owner of the issue, but I need help in resolving this issue. How do I capture that information and then make sure that it's all in one place so that I can get that information back to the requester, but yet still have it all captured so I can see if there are areas where maybe we could drive the requester to directly as opposed to going through a third party and eliminate that middleman, or at least capturing all the information to perhaps be used later to answer other questions. So again, I just throw it out there to the group to see if anybody else has kind of tackled this challenge in any way.
Yeah, please unmute yourselves. And I think this is, Craig, a really common B2B problem that we're used to helping companies solve, right? Being more efficient, using your time more efficiently, and it's kind of less so within universities. So this is a new concept that I think B2B companies can, or universities can learn a lot from B2B, and we can apply a lot of the same principles to capture data and make things actionable and repeatable. But yeah, please, everyone, you can unmute yourselves.
I'll just say we had to change up a lot of things, how we test people. And we had to take that to kind of a digital format instead of doing that in person. We also had to figure out how to get contracts and different things signed and how to get things out to people. So there was a lot of that. Communication was very key, not just with our home office, but with all of our centers. So we started up like town hall meetings where we weren't just sending out things to them, but where they could also give us feedback, because things were changing by the week, and everything was even changing according to what state you were in. Some could still have people in their center, some couldn't. And then rolling back out. So there's just a lot in communication and making sure that you're right in front of them. We had to kind of find a rhythm, you know, of how to communicate on Mondays, and then how to wrap that up on Fridays in case you missed all of those emails. So those are kind of some of the things that we had to just keep pivoting and keep moving as things changed.
Right. And kind of along those same lines then, Kim, I'd be interested to know from Angelo's challenge here on the influx of inbound requests, because you were, again, kind of that one-on-one, but did you find that you had an overwhelming number of requests coming in as people had to kind of shelter in place and now you had to do things remotely? Was there an initial influx, or did it stay pretty consistent throughout?
I would say that there was a huge influx. And then I think as they were hitting different issues and different problems, you know, we kind of all had to go through the same, I don't know, for us, just even getting the PPP funding and just all of the things to keep our centers open, to keep our trainers employed. So there's just a lot to move all of that. And so I think that I'm a hard worker and I work long hours, but I've never worked so hard or so long in the last 8 weeks than I have before. So
yeah, I think a lot of people can sympathize.
These days.
Yeah.
Can anybody else relate to that? I can't imagine what all happened well, I did get to work with a number of customers that had exactly that situation, that all of a sudden the whole world changed and you had to adapt. It was all about adaptability and how do we do this. Around that influx of inbound requests as well, I want to throw it out to the attendees here too. How did you manage coming back to this communication piece though, more around telephony and incoming requests and conversations that you had to have? Were you already built for, say, a remote workforce and being able to take telephone calls, or how did some of you deal with that? Because I had a number of conversations with my customers around what we could do from a voice over IP solution set, and I'm just wondering if this was dealt with by any of you out there today. And if you're having trouble unmuting, let us know, and we'll in the chat we'll unmute you if you can.
Oh, Cindy.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, we can hear ya.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, what I was going to bring up is we had adapted, I guess would be several ways of doing things while we are going through this. We're K through 12 school and a large number of students and staff, and we had to adapt really quickly within a matter of a couple of weeks. And that included getting devices out to students and prior to getting everything else arranged for. The communication piece, we set up a piece was set up so that students and staff would have a specific piece where they would be able to reach one of us from 7 in the morning until 7 at night. They'd reach a live person to communicate with and get an answer. Sometimes it wasn't a complete answer. If we didn't have the answer, we would be communicating with them that we would reach them at a future time as soon as possible. But we were always communicating with them as soon as we possibly could, which I think that seemed to help people feel more relaxed or calm about the situation, that they knew help was coming and that they weren't out there on their own. And then we, as a part of that for students, if they had their device and it wasn't, we'd find out their device wasn't going to be able to be fixed or something that we could do remotely to tell them to do, then we'd set up for them to come in and bring their device. We'd exchange it for them, and we had a kind of a setup 2 days a week where they could bring it in and set it down. We'd give them their new device and they'd be on their way. So there was, adaptations to COVID-19, so everyone was safe, but we'd still get them their devices so they could go on their way. And those were all fairly quick adaptations that had to be done and figured out on the fly. And we have a lot of devices, and we weren't a one-to-one district. So it was very quick to make those changes for everyone. And we are part of the technology, or I was part of the technology team. So that's, brings a different side as far as, viewing how the teachers needed to do things, viewing how the students needed to do things, viewing how administration needed to do things. So it's trying to look at all those things. And we were very fortunate that our administrator that we have working in our department has a really broad view of things. And that was beneficial. And she also listened to all ideas too. So I think I've learned a lot over the past few weeks, and I'm sure I'll continue to learn more from what we've gained working through this all.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that kind of plays into the next slide if we move to it, and that is really around you know, from the challenges that you're facing. We're going to open this up. We just want to capture a little bit from this poll on some that remain that you're going to be dealing with as you look out to the future. And Cindy, thank you for kind of setting that up of here's what we've been dealing with, but here's what we're going to be dealing with and for the foreseeable future. So if y'all wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of feedback on that, it would be greatly appreciated. We'll give it
While
about,
this is going, Cindy, I had a question. What did you guys end up implementing a system to track all of those kind of inquiries and the devices, or did you guys use Excel for that?
We set up I'm not sure exactly, to be honest. We had might have been tied into our help desk. Now you asked me something and I don't know the answer. That's terrible.
No, you don't need to know all the answers.
Yeah. So we had and then it just would feed back after we completed all the questions and we got the answers in. I'm not even sure what the answer, how that was set up. We have a very smart team and everyone doesn't do, I don't happen to know the answer to that one.
No, that's great that you sound like a very tech savvy district. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Let me share that. Can everybody, I don't know if we're sharing that, Victoria, or if we'll just move on and we'll take this information and share it out later. We'll go ahead and move on.
Collaboration is huge.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
So when we look out to solutions, what we were really interested in learning from you all, and feel free to just jump in here, either in chat or go off of mute, and just let us know from solutions and planning for fall 2020, what are some of the things that maybe weren't in place or were in their infancy before all of this began, but now as you look at 2020 in the fall and moving into 2021, what were some of the successes that are coming out of this that are now going to really launch you into the next phase here? I just kind of want to open it up to you, whether it's around this self-service knowledge base idea, if you're opening up channels. I've worked with some customers that opened up chat that they'd never used before. It became a very effective channel for them in talking to and collaborating with students and parents. What are you leveraging to deflect common inquiries? Single system, or are they still kind of siloed? Focus on building a productive remote support team. Is that still part of the plan, or is the plan to bring everybody back in, or maybe make it optional? I'm interested to hear from the group on some of the solutions as we look out to the future. Kim, I don't want to put you on the spot again, or Cindy, since you've already been kind enough to share, but if anybody else wants to, that would be wonderful.
I think what we're doing, so I work at a K through 12, and what we're doing to kind of, I guess, support students and teachers and also supporting staff is, so I'm an instructional coach and I've been collaborating with some of the other program directors, like student support services and technology services. And what we're doing is we're trying to develop kind of like, I guess like a template platform, if you will. So we use Schoology as our LMS currently, and what we're trying to do is develop templates that are easier for teachers to kind of just pick up and use to kind of, I guess, facilitate that adoption of online learning much more quickly. But we're also really having, I guess right now, the challenge is trying to think about what are some of the tools that are going to be necessary for teachers and for students to kind of keep that consistent communication. But also more importantly, what is information that's worth communicating through channels? So we use Microsoft Teams right now to kind of communicate in the back end. But unfortunately, as I think a lot of people mentioned, email has kind of become the primary source for a lot of communication. So A lot of it just kind of goes unseen just because there's so much of it, and it's kind of hard to decipher which communication is important and which is kind of, not as essential. So I think what we're trying to do is focus on trying to build a productive support team remotely, and that includes myself, and trying to think how myself and my colleagues can, I guess, filter and decipher some of the outside resource information to teachers so that it's not as, I guess, complex, and it's just a simple strategy that they can use immediately, and, so students can actually see those benefits.
Terrific. And how different will it look in the fall 2020 as it did fall 2019, if you don't mind me asking?
It's totally different. I mean, so I guess we have 3 plans in place, right? The worst being we're going to be online for the entire 2020-2021 school year. So I guess what we're trying to think of right now is, well, how do we continue this online learning, but also thinking about like the other complications that we're facing? How do we make assessment sustainable? How do we support students, because the variability amongst their I guess their performance is going to be more varied now, considering the fact that we had to pivot so quickly. And then the other piece is, how do teachers instructionally design their courses for an online platform, because their courses have been primarily designed for in-classroom, in-person experiences. So we're really just shifting everything to online. And I guess this in a way has kind of been a good thing for us, because it's forced us to communicate a lot more and to kind of find ways to fill in the gaps that we've currently had as far as communication between support staff, faculty, and admin. But from what I'm seeing, it seems to be kind of like a tiered approach, right? I myself, as kind of like the middle person between admin and teachers, would kind of filter that messaging to teachers so that it's, I guess, a little more actionable as opposed to theoretical in a way. So I guess we're trying to find ways to filter out what's important and essential and what is like quick actions, and then what's something that can be considered for future understanding and future planning.
A lot.
Right.
That's great feedback. That's a lot to deal with.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. We use Teams internally too, and it's a great tool, but I find that things can get buried in Teams just as easy as email, except it's highly searchable, which is nice.
Yeah, you have the ability to search what you might have missed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you also brought up a really good point about the instructional design piece of this, because when this hit in February, March timeframe, all of a sudden, and we love Zoom because Zoom is a really good Zendesk customer as well, but Zoom kind of became the de facto standard, but that was just kind of a Band-Aid, I would imagine, that Zoom can't be the tool to be used going forward. There needs to be a lot more structure around, if we're going to do this remotely, there are other ways to do this, given time now to be able to really put into that.
I heard something interesting, Craig, that it's, their communication tools, that's kind of one thing. Then there's, feeling like a community, which might be Zoom, which might be your instruction. But I have one of my best friends is a 6th grade math teacher in New England. And I was just this past weekend, she went over all the steps that she does to prepare a lesson plan, and it's mind boggling. How much teachers are doing now is just insane. But there's still going to be this disconnect between those, like Kim, what you said, like the actual manipulatives that you have. So there's, it's the lesson plan. She'll do a screencastify, she'll do a Google presentation, she'll put all of that in Google Classroom. And then there's still that disconnect of kids just not really relating as much because they don't have the physical learning. So I think that's going to be a struggle too, is like, how do we get manipulatives to the kids? How do we coach the parents on what to use as a physical example? Because so many of us are visual learners. I think those that don't have that touch and feel are at a bit of a disadvantage, and we kind of need to figure out a way to help students that are visual and physical learners really grasp I'm wondering if anyone on the panel or in the audience has kind of any good solutions that you've found for manipulatives and communicating to visual learners. And Kim, what are you guys using as far as like getting people physical materials?
Yeah, so I mean, we use PDFs and we use our cameras, we use manipulatives. I have a sister who teaches 5th grade, and I went into her classroom and did some brain training with her class. And so I had them, like, you know, they needed to use like a blue and a red pencil. So I would have them all like hold them up for me. And then I'd have them vote with the red or the blue.
Nice.
I had them do something with a scissors, and everyone show me your scissors. Okay, cut this out, and okay, show me this piece of paper. So it was kind of fun, but I only had to do it for 40 minutes, right? Because I was only there for 40 minutes, where I can't imagine, you know, if you're trying to run a class for more than 90 minutes, how you would keep them all, you know, involved and having fun. And, you know, they were in the chat room because I did kind of a contest between the blue team and the red team, and they were, you know, talking smack to each other in the chat room. So yeah, I mean, I think you have to be very creative about how you do it. I think you learn as you go too, right? You learn, okay, well, that didn't work. I'm not going to do it that way anymore. But yeah, it's been very interesting on how to do what we do, you know, over Zoom, or, you know, some of the different things that we've used.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. As we said, good Band-Aid, but certainly not probably a long-term solution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific. All right. Why don't we go ahead and go on to the next slide and just kind of open it up. If there's anything that you all were expecting, maybe you want to share with the group now that you held off sharing until the end, or if there were some areas that maybe piqued a thought that you'd like to share with us now, I'd like to just, in the last couple of minutes here, just open it up to you to get a little dialogue going as well. So again, if you're not able to unmute, let us know either by raising your hand or chatting, and we'll get you unmuted. But just make this a little bit more freeform. Anyone?
Well, I'm actually curious about how teachers or just educators in general, how they're kind of using synchronous versus asynchronous, or some sort of hybridized version of those two models in their online learning. Just because my biggest concern is the summer, again, K through 12, and the one of the biggest things is, I guess, trying to make sure that teachers are ready for the fall in regards to designing their courses to kind of fit that online model, but also trying to make sure that teachers don't burn themselves out, because, you know, they've had to pivot very, very quickly, and they've been kind of, you know, working with things and creating things as they go along. So I'm curious to know, you know, how schools or universities are utilizing that time off to kind of provide support and guidance to teachers without, I guess, overburdening and, you know, burning people out. Because I guess, how do you balance that is the question I'm asking.
Great question. Anybody have a solution, or at least one thing that you've done that's worked fairly well in that regard?
And I'll say one thing. This isn't really a tool, or really maybe we can help educate the parents over the summer that there should be boundaries. I'm just going to say this kind of as a PSA for my 6th grade teacher friend, that in business to business, we all kind of have an understanding that if you're going to email me on a Saturday, I'm probably not going to get back to you till Monday. Or, you know, if it's 10 o'clock at night, I'm probably not going to get back to you, and that's okay in business. Students who are emailing teachers don't have those boundaries. Parents, it seems, don't have those boundaries either. So in K through 12, I think I'm helping coach my friends because I'm in business and saying, you guys need to start laying some ground rules because you will burn out. I mean, they're answering emails at 10, 11 o'clock at night from students. And it's just, they don't have the same expectations as we do in business about personal boundaries. So I'll say that. I'm just going to throw that out there. There should be some boundaries respected for teachers. But I love that idea of having a summer, kind of like taking advantage of the summer to have that be very useful time for teachers to be able to get up on their tech, maybe do some boxed, some boxed lesson plans that are already kind of built out, because my gosh, you guys are making PowerPoints for every single lesson. I mean, every lesson to plan takes 5-6 times longer than it should. It's nuts.
Yep, good point. All right, anybody else before we let you go and give you maybe a couple of minutes back on your day? All right, you will be getting some deliverables. We will be following up and making sure that this was a valuable use of your time. We really appreciate everybody joining. Look for that email on the recording, on the white paper, and some additional things that we'll be sending out to you as well. We really, really appreciate you taking the time. And if there are any other questions too, feel free to ping us back on email too. So thank you all for coming. We wish you the best, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for all you do. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Sonia.